Hello, I'm David Dowdy. I own Action Coach Lake Norman, the your local training and business coaching firm, and I'm excited to have Kelly Korak with Blender Creative on the Business Spotlight series this morning. And Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Blender Creative, if you would?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, my name is Kelly Korak. I'm the owner of Blender Creative Company. Got started in 2007, and we've actually got started during the recession, right before that, and seeing quite a bit of change in our industry over the last however many years. But yeah, so we focus on branding, graphic design. We work with a lot of medium-sized companies, small business as well, with logo development, brand guidelines, really setting up the look and feel for the brand personality of their company. And then also any supporting materials. So whether that's website design, social media design, ad signage, stationery, which is, people use less and less, but and any type of, we also do annual reports, you know, you name it, billboards, whatever design is involved with and marketing, advertising. That's what we've done. So, and a lot of our clients, we don't have one particular industry we work with. We've really
Okay.
diversified. So which enjoys it keeps us fresh and we get to learn the industries that we're working in. But so yeah, it runs the gamut. So we could talk
Well,
about that some more. But yeah.
yeah. I look forward to learning more about that. But you're located here in Mooresville, right?
Yeah, so we have an office in downtown Mooresville at the Mac on Main building. And we've been there, actually, the building just opened up in October. So we've been there, we were the first tenants, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
beautiful. We're just so yeah, it's lovely restored historic building. So it's a great creative space. This is not the beautiful, this is my home office. So yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
But
Well, so you've been in business, man, quite a few years now, since 2007.
yeah,
Congratulations on
thank
that
you.
and
Yeah,
surviving the recession and COVID and all the
yeah. Yeah,
things
before
going
that
on.
I worked for like design agencies, and I worked in-house at a publishing company and a couple other companies. So I had some years under my belt before I got started on my own. So, observed what I liked and didn't like about the management style of where places I had worked and types of clients, and learned, some really great tips on business ownership. I worked for a small agency and really was worked directly with the owners, and so they kind of mentored me, but I also got to see some things that I'd like to do differently. So,
Right. Well, now that you've
yeah.
been in it for whatever, 17 years or so
Mhm.
now, if
You
you
did
had
the
to do
math.
it all over again, what
Hmm.
what might you do differently?
Yeah, it's funny. There's actually a lot of things I do differently. Especially like, so I was introduced to a book called The E-Myth, maybe a couple years ago. And I was like, gosh, I wish
Yeah.
somebody had given me this book when I got started,
It's a must
especially.
read. It's a must read for all you
Yeah,
listeners
yeah, I did the
and
audio
viewers here.
version while I worked, but yeah, so the thing that really stood out to me, especially if you're starting a business where you are the person producing the work. So, for example, being a graphic designer, I'm doing the design work. In the book, they talk about they have a fictitious company where she's a pie maker, and she's this great pie maker, and everybody says you should open your own pie shop, and she does, and she's cranking out all the pies, and um, and and the problem with that is that you're not operating your business as a business owner. You're operating the business as like the worker bee, basically, because you're the one producing the goods. If I could go back, I would think about growth and where I wanted to be and set up my business to where eventually all the pressure to produce the goods would not be solely on me, which is a real challenge when you're a creative individual, whether you're like a writer or a designer or a photographer, videographer. It's hard to give up because it's your passion, it's your love, and you're the
Hmm.
one producing the work. And a lot of times people are coming to you because of your particular talent and style. So it's a challenge in my type of business to set it up as a business owner to not be the one producing the work. But in hindsight, I wish I had set it up thinking about it more as a business owner rather than the technician, as they call it in the book. So yeah.
Excellent. Oh, it's a fantastic read. Every small business owner should jump
Yeah.
into that immediately.
Mhm.
Haven't already read it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it is a challenge to I talk about it as being having two professions now. You have the profession of that creative side, the branding, the
Mhm.
graphic kind of thing, but you also have the profession of business ownership. So it's two
Right.
different roles, two different skill sets, two different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
it's why a lot of, I mean, and graphic design is the kind of industry where it's an easy type of business to get started on your own, as far as there's not a lot of overhead. You don't necessarily, you don't have to have any supplies. You really just have to have your computer and your skills. You obviously
right.
have to have clients, but there's a lot of designers out there who are excellent, excellent designers, but they really, the business ownership, the sales, the marketing, juggling it all is, they start doing it and they're like, this is miserable. So it's not for everybody, that's like,
Uh,
because being an entrepreneur is different than just being, a designer. And so you have to have both to
it, it
successfully do it.
it applies, whether you're an architect or plumber or
Mhm.
general contractor, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's different once you start getting outside of that skill set or that
Mhm.
job type piece. So okay, so that's a key learning that you. Any other learnings that might come to mind that you've kind of experienced over the years that you might think are beneficial for some listeners here?
Yeah, I think and it kind of goes back into that mindset of being a solopreneur, is like, when I got started, I was the only one. I didn't really I worked like I didn't need to pass anything off to anybody. So I didn't really have a lot of systems in place. Because where I knew the stuff was on my computer, I knew where that person's contact information was. I knew where I was keeping files stored.
That's
I
right.
didn't really have a lot of systems set up. And my business is really deadline driven. So I'd sit in front of my computer, crank out as much work as I could, and then call it a day, and then do it the next day. And so as far as like systematizing things, I wasn't great at systematizing. And then when I started growing, I tried to start systematizing myself, and then realized, wow, this is not my forte. I'm a creative person, my personality type, I'm detail oriented when it comes to design, but details when it comes to like, like, we're going to give everything job numbers and we're going to have a job tickets. Can't stand it. And I was forcing
Yep.
myself to do it. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I brought in somebody who that was their specialty. They love organization. They love the detail. They love the stuff that really was a challenge to me. So understanding I don't have to do it all. I just need to bring in the people who do it well, because I was miserable trying to
That's
do
that's
it.
awesome. Stay in your
Yeah.
lane, right? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's great. So the years in business, it, I've owned multiple businesses myself, and we go in with these ideas of what it's going to be like to be a business owner, like
Mhm.
some good, some
At the
challenges.
beach with your laptop.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what are some of those that you've experienced and maybe overcome, or your
Mhm.
belief system around that might be beneficial to share?
Yeah, well, what I just said is probably like a little bit of a precursor to what I was going to say, because, I'm anybody who knows me, who's a friend of mine, knows I like a good time. I like fun. I'm adventurous, and I like to get out there. So I had this vision, and I've got 3 kids, so it's also like,
Well,
I've got a lot of responsibility as well. But I had this vision of like, oh, I'm going to be able to, and part of the reason I went solo, I went on my own, is so that I could be at home with my kids. I started the business a year before having my first child. And so I really, had this vision of like, I'm going to be able to work and be home and be able to vacations and spend time with my kids. And I was able to do some of that, but it definitely did not look as pretty as I had pictured it. And so I was kind of going into that world of the virtual office space, juggling life and business pre-COVID. So all from the outside, everybody's like, look at you. That's wonderful. This is so great. And then whenever I'm like, it's not, it's not what it's cracked up to be. Like
mhm.
so then whenever everybody was forced into the virtual world, all my friends and colleagues are like, oh, this is what you've been doing since 2007. Like, this is hard.
Yep.
So I think for me, it was really like, figuring out, okay, I really have to have designated work time. I have to have a better balance between personal life and business, because I was getting very frustrated, feeling like I was doing a terrible job as like a mother and an individual, and then as just a person outside of work, and then not doing the best job as a professional either. So
Mhm.
really setting boundaries of like, okay, this is my work time, figuring out what's going to work in my day, figuring out, okay, do I need to have somebody come watch my children, so I'm not feeling torn. So really that was being self-employed for me, being working virtually. I had to really navigate what does that actually look like? And what do I
Yeah.
need to bring in place to help keep the sanity?
So, if I may, that work-life balance that we hear about,
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm,
working family has its demands. You're saying you had to do that. What are a couple things that maybe you implemented to help you stay in your lane during certain times of the day or stay focused? Because as a creative person, there aren't really
mhm.
many boundaries. Like how did
Right.
how did you put boundaries in place that worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like there's I actually have this another book reference. Maybe I can get some royalties from this.
There
There's a
you go.
little book called Design Your Day. I think I have it probably back here somewhere. I actually read it every single year at the beginning of the year. It's a really quick read. It's by Claire Diaz Ortiz, and she had some great, really, she's a mother, I think, of maybe three or four even, and she was one of the founders of Twitter years ago.
Mhm.
What I sort of have to do is look at my day and say, okay, where are the challenges that I have? What are the available times that where I know I can work uninterrupted? So
Mhm.
I started getting up really early, getting some work done, pretty early on, where I knew I'm not going to get calls from anybody. I'm not going to have to answer emails. This is going to be uninterrupted work time. So I had to kind of use what she calls even the fringe hours. And that was, getting up pretty early and working. And I'm not a morning person, but I had to kind of just train myself to do that. So if I can get up, have some quiet time, get my coffee, get some work in, get some emails answered, or do some things uninterrupted, I feel so much better, less stressed. I
Right.
can get that done. But also for me, I've had to block off time where it's like, okay, this is no matter what's going on, because it's really easy to look at the deadlines and say, okay, I've got to get all this done. This person's breathing down my neck for this project or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I need to still work in time for sales and marketing and touching base with people in my network. And so I actually have on my calendar block time, like one day a week for a few hours of like, this is business development. And I have to really keep it sacred. I've had to block off days where it's like, okay, this is a non-meeting day.
Mhm.
Can't schedule any meetings. This is like Tuesdays is like the most productive day of the week, so I can't do any meetings that day. So those are definitely some choices I've had to make of like kind of and it is like ignoring what feels very urgent, of like like people needing you or you really should answer this, but it's like if I don't do this, I'm never going to find the time and I'm not contributing to the growth of my business.
Brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And maybe that's one of the things you attribute your growth to is that discipline on a daily basis or weekly basis to focus on the things that are important and not necessarily urgent. But anything else that you point to towards what's attributed to your growth and success over the years?
Well, definitely relationships. I mean, maintaining relationships with clients and partners and, just keeping in touch with people, fostering those personal relationships too. A lot of my clients and partners I've worked with over the years, I've known for 20 some years, have become even friends. And so just keeping up with people, checking in, grabbing coffee, seeing, whether it's in person or online. If it's any local businesses, I try to see, as many as I can in person. It's really valuable just to have that one-on-one time. I think that's contributed to our success is people trusting us
Yeah.
and knowing that we're responsive, that we have integrity, and that we care about their business. Just genuine care for our clients has attributed. And I also think diversifying our client base as well, because in our industry, there's a lot of kind of push to, okay, you really need to focus on you're a graphic designer for the wedding industry or the engineering industry or healthcare or whatever. And I've done a lot of healthcare. So we do have some strong, some verticals that we have a lot of experience in.
Mhm.
Behavioral health and healthcare is one of them. But what I found even through, starting the business right before the recession and then going through COVID is that if we were all into one industry, like if we were the agency for the travel industry, I mean, those guys were hurting
Yeah.
super bad during COVID. I saw a lot of shops close and I saw, and I knew people that were doing marketing for banking and finance and real estate, back in 2008. And, that they went through a horrible experience. So we were doing a lot of healthcare back then, and it was really recession proof. And then
Mhm.
um, over the last few years, we've kind of grown into the behavioral health, mental health space.
Okay.
And and unfortunately, that's even just exponentially grown since COVID. So kind of just seeing what the need are, where the trends are in business and adjusting to that, and then staying diversified has really helped as well.
That's fantastic insight and some nuggets there for people to be wary of being too concentrated in any, because my goodness, like you said, whether it's the housing turn or COVID or something like that,
Mhm.
it can really have some devastating impacts if you're too concentrated.
Yeah.
So great. Not sure how big your team is now. You talk about not being the only one.
Yeah,
So
so my team is, we have we're like a small but mighty team. So there
mhm,
is three of us on our core team. So it's myself, my project manager, Ashton, and then my designer, Lauren. And then we also have a lot of support partners, power partners that are in web development and copywriting. And
mhm,
those are definitely two areas, PR, digital marketing, like, doing analytics, things like that. So we'll bring them in, and I sometimes just call it like almost like an accordion based on, how many services people need.
mhm.
We can grow and become much larger team. And most of the people we work with have been doing their craft for like sometimes at minimum 20 years. So we're bringing in like some other entrepreneurs that we've worked with for years and trust and know their skills.
Yeah. So what seems to work best for you as you're looking at either employees or some contract help or partners in
Mhm.
some periphery type lanes? What do you look for in people you want to work with? What's proven successful for you?
Yeah, well, definitely like if somebody's gonna be on our team, and even like if I really like it when we can interface with the client. In our industry, a lot of times, and it's starting to change, but graphic designers and web developers and some of those people in our space, we're kind of almost treated as like antisocial. We're like in the back room, like no windows. We got all our Star Wars action figures and nerd paraphernalia, and we can't talk to clients because we're the weird artists. But and don't get me wrong, I've worked with plenty of those people before.
Right.
But for my team, I really like people who can interface with the client, who can present, who can write a great warm email. A lot of soft skills to me are really, really important. You've got to have the portfolio and experience, especially with the designer and a writer that have the creativity. But at the same time, can you get on the phone and explain, can you or in person present your work and provide, rationale, and there's a lot of politics sometimes, especially when we get into branding and rebranding a large company. You'd be surprised at the emotion that's involved with the logo. It's
Oh,
a lot. And so there's a lot of, and especially if you're working with like government or higher ed, like being able to just articulate your thoughts and your creativity. And then also, being able to handle, in our world, especially when you're presenting designs, it's not black and white. It's very subjective. So if somebody
mhm,
comes at you with, I don't like what you did, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to be able to respond graciously?
right.
And how do so personality, integrity, those people, human skills are definitely something that I look for, so that if I'm not in the office, if they got to talk to the client directly, how are they going to handle themselves? And thankfully I have a fantastic team that is just super great with that. So
Still dealing with people. No
yeah,
matter what, we're dealing
absolutely.
with people. That's right.
Yep.
This is great. So as we tend to walk towards wrapping up the interview here, what are some other words of wisdom, some advice you might give to an emerging business owner or somebody that's out there been at it for a little while that may just be struggling a bit, looking to get to the next level? Final
Yeah, I mean, it
thoughts.
definitely is, like you said, like entrepreneurship can be really lonely. I definitely think like having a business coach is great. So there you go. It's a plug for
Well, there you go.
for your industry. I mean, really, really, I waited way too long to have a coach. I wish I would have hired a coach years ago. It's really invaluable to be able to bounce all your thoughts. And there's a lot of fears. I mean, especially like even in this economy with inflation, and some industries are really suffering. You know, my industry definitely suffers from people saying, I don't need to do that. I can do it in-house in Canva or whatever. You can kind of, or AI is, ridding us, the need for us. I mean, there's fears that, how am I going to weather this? How am I do that? Then of course, like there's so many things that you can do now as far as marketing yourself or directions you can go with your business. And if you're like me, an idea person, you kind of get overwhelmed with every little shiny object. You're like, well, do I follow that? Do I do this? So a coach is really great for me to say, okay, I just, it's almost like business counseling, really. You share your thoughts, concerns, and then help give you guidance and direction. So it's like, okay, you can't do everything all at once. What are going to be your goals for this quarter? Or there's times where I had ideas that didn't even align with like my business plan. So I'm like, but you get kind of lost in your own thoughts, or like you see, oh, everybody's doing this, so I need to do that too. So it really helps to have a coach that's outside looking in, that can give you guidance on, what you should pursue, and maybe where you're lacking, where your weak spots are, where your strengths are. So that to me is what I would definitely recommend for people getting started. And then also to have like a good network of possibly there are other people in your industry, or also people in maybe not even in your industry, like just a good like support system and kind of networking as far as other business owners, because you do need encouragement. And it can get pretty isolating and lonely if you get started. So, and it can be daunting. So it's good to have other people around you to support you, and, learn from their mistakes or their successes, and collaborate.
That's that's fantastic. Business owners, we're all in it together, and what I find is people are more than willing to help and
Mhm.
lend some guidance, make some connections for you if we just
Yeah.
ask. So thanks for sharing that. And
Yeah.
Kelly Korak with Blender Creative Company, thank you so much for being on the Business Spotlight series. I mean, I
Thanks.
appreciate the
Yeah.
words of wisdom and you sharing your story, and congratulations on your successes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.